The moment Derek Stone's hand brushed mine while reaching for the coffee pot, I should have stepped back. Instead, I lingered, feeling the warmth of his proximity as he leaned closer than necessary in my own kitchen. When Nathan walked in and saw us standing there, Derek's chest almost touching my shoulder, his breath on my neck, I just laughed it off like it was nothing. That laugh cost me everything. "Sorry, didn't mean to crowd you," Derek said with that easy smile, but he didn't move away. If anything, he seemed to lean in closer as he poured his coffee, his free hand resting on the granite countertop just inches from mine. "No problem at all," I replied, my voice carrying a lightness I hadn't felt in months. Derek had this way of making me feel seen, appreciated, something that had been missing from my marriage for far too long. At 34, I was still attractive, still worthy of attention, and Derek's presence reminded me of that fact. Nathan appeared in the kitchen doorway, his math teacher's observant eyes taking in the scene. Derek's proximity to me, the way I wasn't moving away, the comfortable familiarity between us. My husband's face remained expressionless, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "Morning, Nathan," Derek said casually, finally taking a small step back. "Thanks for letting me borrow the ladder yesterday. Fixed that gutter issue perfectly." "No problem," Nathan replied, his voice flat and measured. He moved to the refrigerator, pulling out ingredients for his usual breakfast routine. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I felt compelled to fill the void. Derek was just telling me about the HOA meeting next week. Apparently, they're voting on the new landscaping budget. Nathan nodded without looking up from his eggs. I heard. The tension was palpable, but instead of addressing it, I found myself defending the moment. "What's wrong with neighbors being friendly?" I said with another laugh, this one more forced. "Derek's just being neighborly." Our 8-year-old daughter, Mila, wandered into the kitchen, her school backpack dragging behind her. She looked between the 3 adults, sensing something off in the atmosphere. "Why does everyone look weird?" she asked with the blunt honesty only children possess. "Nobody looks weird, sweetie," I said quickly, shooting a glance at Nathan. "Derek was just leaving, weren't you?" Derek nodded, draining his coffee cup. "Absolutely. Thanks again for the hospitality, Lirien. Nathan, I'll see you around." After Derek left, Nathan continued his breakfast preparation in silence. The smart speaker in the corner had been recording our conversation, something I'd grown so accustomed to that I barely noticed it anymore. Our home was filled with connected devices, security cameras, smart thermostats, Wi-Fi enabled everything. Nathan had always been meticulous about technology, claiming it made our lives more efficient and secure. "You're being ridiculous," I said, unable to tolerate his silent treatment any longer. "He borrowed a ladder. We had coffee. That's what neighbors do." Nathan cracked an egg into the pan with deliberate precision. I didn't say anything. "You didn't have to. Your whole attitude says it all. Derek is married, I'm married, and we're just being friendly. There's nothing wrong with that." I never said there was. His calm responses frustrated me more than yelling would have. "Then why are you acting like this? Why can't you just be normal about having neighbors over?" Nathan finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I'm not acting like anything, Lirien. I'm making breakfast." Mila tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, why are you mad at Dad?" "I'm not mad at anyone, baby. Dad's just being sensitive about things that don't matter." Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he said nothing. He finished cooking his eggs, plated them, and sat down at the kitchen table with his laptop, a morning routine that had become as predictable as the sunrise. I busied myself getting Mila ready for school, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Nathan's silence felt different this time, more purposeful. When I glanced over at him, he was typing something on his computer, his expression focused and methodical. "What are you working on?" I asked, trying to inject normalcy back into the morning. "Just updating some security settings," he replied without looking up. making sure everything's running properly. The word sent an odd chill through me, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Our smart home system was Nathan's domain. He'd installed and configured everything himself, claiming it gave him peace of mind about our family's safety and security. As I walked Mila to the bus stop, I noticed Derek's car pulling out of his driveway. He waved at me through the window, and I waved back, feeling a small thrill at the connection. When I returned home, Nathan was gone, already left for his teaching job at the high school. The house felt empty and quiet, filled only with the subtle hum of electronic devices going about their automated tasks. I went about my morning routine, preparing for another day at the insurance office, where I worked as a claims adjuster. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well and gave me a sense of independence. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, Vivian. "How are things with Nathan? You sounded frustrated when we talked yesterday." I typed back, "Same old stuff. He gets weird about the stupidest things. Derek came over this morning, and Nathan acted like I was doing something wrong by being polite." Her response came quickly. "You deserve to feel appreciated, honey. Don't let him make you feel guilty for being social." My mother had never been Nathan's biggest fan. She thought he was too reserved, too boring for someone like me. "You need someone who matches your energy," she'd often say. "Someone who makes you feel alive." Derek certainly made me feel more alive than I had in months. That evening, Nathan came home and went straight to his home office without much conversation. I could hear him typing, occasionally talking on the phone in low tones. When I passed by the office, I noticed he had several devices spread across his desk: tablets, phones, what looked like router equipment. "Spring cleaning?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up briefly. "Just running some diagnostics, making sure everything's secure and backed up properly." "Okay," I said, though something about his tone felt off. "Dinner will be ready in an hour." "Sounds good." As I prepared dinner, I found myself thinking about Derek's visit that morning. The way he'd stood close to me, the warmth of his attention, the feeling of being desired. It had been so long since Nathan had looked at me the way Derek did, with genuine interest and appreciation. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Thanks for the coffee this morning. Hope I didn't cause any trouble with Nathan." I glanced toward Nathan's office, then typed back, "Not at all. He's just not very social. Thanks for fixing the gutter issue." "Anytime. Maybe we can grab coffee sometime when it's more convenient." The suggestion sent a flutter through my stomach. "Maybe," I replied, adding a smiley face emoji. During dinner, Nathan was quieter than usual, responding to Mila's chatter about school, but not initiating much conversation with me. After we put Mila to bed, he returned to his office. "Are you coming to bed soon?" I asked around 10 o'clock. "In a bit, just finishing up some things." I went to bed alone, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how distant we'd become. When had Nathan stopped really seeing me? When had our marriage become this series of polite interactions and shared responsibilities? Around midnight, I heard Nathan finally come to bed. He slipped under the covers quietly, careful not to wake me, though I was still awake. The space between us felt vast despite the physical proximity. The next morning brought another text from Derek. "Good morning, neighbor. Hope you have a great day." I smiled, typing back, "Thank you, you too." It was such a small thing, but it brightened my mood considerably. Someone was thinking about me. Someone found me worth a good morning message. When was the last time Nathan had done something like that? As I got ready for work, I noticed Nathan in his office again, this time with what looked like printed documents spread across his desk. When he saw me looking, he casually closed a folder. "More security stuff?" I asked. "Just organizing some files," he said, "making sure everything's properly documented." The word documented struck me as odd, but I didn't pursue it. I had my own day to worry about, my own work to focus on. At the insurance office, my colleague Jennifer noticed my improved mood. "You seem different today," she said. More energetic. Just feeling good, I replied. Sometimes you need a reminder that life can still be interesting. Trouble in paradise? She asked with raised eyebrows. Not trouble exactly, just routine. You know how marriage gets after a while. Jennifer nodded knowingly. Been there. Sometimes you need something to shake things up, remind you that you're still an interesting person. Her words resonated with me. That's exactly what Derek's attention felt like, a reminder that I was still worth noticing, still capable of inspiring interest in someone. That afternoon, I received another text from Derek. Any chance you'll be in your backyard later? I'm working on my fence and could use a friendly face to chat with. I found myself looking forward to the possibility all afternoon. When I got home from work, Derek was indeed in his backyard, working on a section of fence that bordered our properties. I made a point of going outside to water my plants, positioning myself where we could easily talk over the low fence. How's the fence project going? I called out. Derek looked up with that warm smile. Slowly but surely. These old posts are more stubborn than I expected. Nathan's good with that kind of thing if you need help, I offered, though the suggestion felt hollow even as I said it. That's generous, but I think I've got it handled. Besides, I'd hate to impose more than I already have. You haven't imposed at all. We're neighbors. We should help each other out. Derek set down his tools and walked over to the fence line. I appreciate that. It's nice having friendly neighbors. Some people keep to themselves so much you'd think they were hiding something. I laughed. Nathan's just private. Always has been. Sometimes I think he'd be perfectly happy if we never talked to another soul. That must be lonely for you, Derek said, his tone sympathetic. You seem like someone who enjoys connecting with people. The observation hit closer to home than I expected. I do, actually. I like conversations, getting to know people. Life's too short to just exist in your own little bubble. Exactly. Derek leaned against the fence post, bringing us closer together. Speaking of which, that coffee invitation still stands. There's a nice little place downtown if you ever want to get out of the neighborhood for a bit. The suggestion was innocent enough, but something about the way he said it made my heart race. That sounds nice, I heard myself saying. Maybe sometime when things slow down. I'll hold you to that, he said with a grin. That evening, Nathan was once again buried in his office, surrounded by what looked like an increasing amount of technical equipment. When I brought him coffee, I noticed he had multiple screens open on his laptop, graphs, data tables, what looked like log files. What's all this? I asked, genuinely curious. Network analysis, he said, minimizing several windows. Just making sure our home security is optimized. You'd be surprised how much data these smart devices generate. Data about what? Everything. When devices connect, for how long, what they access. It's all logged and tracked for security purposes. Something in his tone made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Sounds complicated. It's actually quite straightforward once you understand the patterns. Every device has a unique signature. Every connection leaves a digital footprint. It's all there if you know how to read it. I nodded as if I understood, but the conversation left me feeling oddly unsettled. That night, I found myself being more conscious of the various devices around our house. The smart speakers, the security cameras, the connected thermostats. Had I always been this aware of them, or was Nathan's technical talk making me paranoid? Over the next few days, my text conversations with Derek became more frequent. Nothing inappropriate, just friendly exchanges about neighborhood happenings, weather, casual observations about life. But I found myself looking forward to his messages, checking my phone more often, smiling at his jokes and comments. You seem distracted lately, Nathan observed one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. Just work stuff, I replied, though that wasn't entirely true. The Morrison claim is turning into a nightmare. Lots of back and forth with adjusters. Nathan nodded, but I caught him watching me more closely than usual. When my phone buzzed with a text, I noticed his eyes flick toward it. Popular tonight, he commented mildly. Just Mom, I lied, slipping the phone into my pocket without checking the message. Later, in the privacy of our bedroom, I read Derek's text. Saw you getting home from work today. That blue dress looks great on you. The compliment sent warmth through me. When was the last time Nathan had noticed what I was wearing, let alone complimented me on it? I typed back, Thank you. That's sweet of you to say. Just being honest, your husband's a lucky man. I stared at that message for a long time before responding. Sometimes I wonder if he realizes that. Derek's reply came quickly. His loss if he doesn't. Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. I deleted the entire conversation thread, though I wasn't entirely sure why. It wasn't like we were saying anything truly inappropriate, but something made me want to keep these exchanges private. The next morning, Nathan was in his office earlier than usual, and I could hear him on a phone call. His tone was professional, businesslike, but I couldn't make out the specific words. When he emerged for breakfast, he seemed more focused than usual, almost purposeful in his movements. Everything okay? I asked. Fine. Just handling some administrative things, making sure all our accounts and systems are properly secured and backed up. Backed up for what? Just good practice. You never know when you might need comprehensive records of things. The way he said things felt loaded with meaning I couldn't decipher. That afternoon, Derek texted asking if I wanted to meet for coffee the next day. I know a place outside the neighborhood, he wrote. Might be nice to get away from familiar surroundings for a bit. I stared at the message for several minutes. Meeting Derek for coffee felt like crossing a line, though I couldn't articulate exactly what line that would be. We were both married, both neighbors, both adults capable of having a friendly coffee without it meaning anything more. Okay, I finally typed. What time? 2:00. I'll text you the address. I spent the rest of the day alternating between excitement and guilt. It was just coffee, I told myself. People had coffee with neighbors all the time. There was nothing wrong with wanting adult conversation with someone who actually seemed interested in what I had to say. That evening, Nathan worked late in his office again. When I passed by around 9:00, I saw him organizing what looked like printed documents into labeled folders. The methodical way he was sorting everything reminded me of how he approached his math lessons, systematic, thorough, building towards some logical conclusion. Big project? I asked from the doorway. He looked up, and for a moment, I thought I saw something calculating in his expression. Just organizing records, making sure everything's properly documented and easily accessible. For what? You never know when you might need comprehensive documentation of patterns and timelines. Again, that loaded way of speaking, as if his words carried meanings I wasn't grasping. I went to bed that night with a strange mixture of anticipation about meeting Derek and uneasiness about Nathan's recent behavior. Something was shifting in our household dynamic, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. The next morning, Nathan left for work without his usual goodbye kiss, though he did pause at the door to say, "Have a good day, Lirien. I hope you make good choices." The comment struck me as odd, but I was too focused on my upcoming coffee date to analyze it deeply. At 1:45, I drove to the coffee shop Derek had suggested, a cozy place about 15 minutes from our neighborhood. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. "I took the liberty of ordering for you," he said, standing to pull out my chair. "Figured you for a vanilla latte type." He was right, and I was touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you. This is nice. I haven't been here before. I come here sometimes when I need to think. It's quiet, private. Good place for real conversation." We talked for over an hour about everything and nothing. Our jobs, our frustrations, our dreams that had gotten buried under the weight of daily responsibilities. Derek was an excellent listener, asking follow-up questions, remembering details from previous conversations. He made me feel heard in a way I hadn't experienced in years. You seem like someone who has a lot to offer, he said as we prepared to leave. I hope the people in your life recognize that. Some days I wonder, I admitted. Marriage can be isolating sometimes. You get so caught up in routines and responsibilities that you forget you're supposed to actually enjoy each other's company. Derek nodded knowingly. I understand that more than you might think. As we walked to our cars, he touched my arm gently. This was really nice, Lirien. I hope we can do it again soon. I'd like that, I said, meaning it completely. The drive home was filled with a lightness I hadn't felt in months. Derek saw me as interesting, worth spending time with, worth listening to. The contrast with my home life felt stark and suddenly unbearable. When I got home, Nathan was already there, which was unusual for a weekday afternoon. He was in the living room with his laptop, and I noticed our router was blinking with more activity than normal. You're home early, I observed. Half day for teacher development. How was your afternoon? Fine. Just ran some errands, grabbed coffee. Anywhere interesting? Something in his tone made me cautious. Just that place downtown. You know, the one near the shopping center. Nathan nodded slowly, his fingers moving across his laptop keyboard. The one on 5th Street? I think so. I don't really pay attention to street names. He was looking at his screen, but I had the distinct feeling he was paying very close attention to my responses. That evening, I noticed Nathan installing some kind of new software on several of our devices. When I asked about it, he explained it was enhanced backup and synchronization software. It automatically preserves all data and communications across all connected devices, he said. Creates redundant copies in multiple cloud storage locations. Very thorough. Why do we need that? You never know when comprehensive records might become important. Better to have everything properly preserved and easily accessible than to wish you had it later. I was beginning to recognize this pattern in his speech, the emphasis on documentation, preservation, records. It felt like he was preparing for something, though I couldn't imagine what. That night, as I deleted my text thread with Derek again, I noticed the phone seemed to pause longer than usual before confirming the deletion. Probably just my imagination, I told myself, but the thought lingered uncomfortably as I fell asleep. The HOA office lobby was bustling with the usual weekday morning activity when Nathan walked in, carrying a manila envelope. I was there to drop off our annual landscaping preferences, a mundane task that had somehow become my responsibility over the years. I didn't expect to see my husband there, and judging by his expression, the feeling was mutual. Nathan, I said, surprised. What brings you here? Administrative business, he replied, his tone neutral, but his eyes focused intently on my face. I need to file some documentation with the HOA board. Before I could ask what kind of documentation, Derek appeared from the direction of the mailboxes. The timing felt awkward, though there was no reason it should have. We were all residents of the same neighborhood. All had legitimate business at the HOA office. Morning, you two, Derek said with his usual easy smile. Beautiful day, isn't it? Absolutely, I replied, perhaps a bit too enthusiastically. Nathan said nothing, but I noticed him watching Derek carefully, as if cataloguing something. Derek, perfect timing, said Margaret Chen, the HOA president, emerging from her office with a clipboard. I wanted to follow up on the visitor log discrepancies we discussed. Could you spare a few minutes? Derek's smile faltered slightly. Discrepancies. Just some timeline clarifications. Nothing major, but we like to keep accurate records of who's accessing common areas and when. I felt a chill of unease, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Derek glanced at me, then at Nathan, before following Margaret into her office. Nathan approached the reception desk and handed over his manila envelope. This needs to be officially received and time-stamped, he told the receptionist. It's a legal preservation notice. A what? I asked, moving closer. The receptionist opened the envelope and began reading the contents. her eyebrows rising. "This is quite comprehensive," she said to Nathan. "You'll need Mrs. Vale to sign acknowledging receipt." "That's why I waited until she was here," Nathan said calmly. My hands trembled slightly as I took the papers. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out. Preservation of all digital communications, smart home device logs, cloud storage backups, timeline documentation, potential legal proceedings. "What is this?" I asked, my voice higher than I intended. "Exactly what it says," Nathan replied. "A notice to preserve all digital records, communications, and device logs. It lists specific dates and times that need to be maintained in their original form." I scanned the dates. They corresponded perfectly with Derek's visits to our house, our coffee meeting, even times when I'd been texting with him in the backyard. The precision was terrifying. "Nathan, this is insane. You're acting like—" "Like what?" he interrupted quietly. "Like someone who pays attention to patterns? Like someone who believes in documentation and accountability?" The HOA office had gone quiet, other residents and staff clearly listening to our exchange. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was on trial in a public courtroom. "Sign here, please," the receptionist said, pointing to a line at the bottom of the document. "This just acknowledges that you've received the notice and understand its contents." My signature felt like a confession, though I wasn't sure what I was confessing to. As I handed the papers back, Derek emerged from Margaret's office looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Everything sorted out?" I asked him, trying to inject normalcy into the situation. "Just some confusion about access times," Derek said, not quite meeting my eyes. Apparently, the electronic logs don't match what I remembered about when I'd been in certain areas. Nathan's expression remained neutral, but I caught the slightest hint of satisfaction around his eyes. "Memory can be unreliable," Nathan said conversationally. "That's why electronic records are so valuable. They don't forget, don't misremember, don't embellish." The word embellish hung in the air like an accusation. Derek cleared his throat. "Well, I should get going. Lots to do today." As he left, I noticed he didn't make eye contact with me. The easy familiarity we'd developed over the past weeks seemed to evaporate in the sterile atmosphere of the HOA office. "We should go too," I said to Nathan, desperate to escape the increasingly uncomfortable situation. "Of course," Nathan agreed. "I've accomplished what I came here to do." The drive home was silent, but my mind was racing. The precision of those dates and times, the legal language, the way Nathan had orchestrated the entire encounter, it all suggested a level of planning and preparation that frightened me. At home, I confronted him directly. "What's this really about, Nathan? Why are you acting like I've committed some kind of crime?" "Have you?" he asked simply. "Have I what? Had coffee with a neighbor? Been polite to someone who's been kind to me? What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm simply ensuring that accurate records are maintained. If there's nothing to worry about, then there's nothing to worry about." His circular logic was maddening. "This is paranoid behavior, Nathan. Normal people don't serve legal papers on their wives for talking to neighbors." "Normal wives don't delete text message threads every night," he replied calmly. The observation hit me like a physical blow. "How do you know that?" "Because I pay attention, Lirien. I notice patterns. I observe changes in behavior. And I document everything." That evening, my phone rang. It was my mother, Vivian. "Honey, what's going on? Jennifer Stone called me. She said there was some kind of scene at the HOA office today." Jennifer Stone, Derek's wife. My stomach dropped. "Mom, it's complicated." "She said Nathan was serving you with legal papers in public, that Derek was being questioned about visitor logs. What is happening?" I tried to explain the situation, but even as I spoke, I could hear how it sounded. My mother's initial supportive responses grew more cautious as I described the preservation notice, the timeline documentation, the electronic logs. "Honey," she said finally, What exactly have you been doing with this neighbor? Nothing inappropriate. We've had coffee. We text occasionally. We talk over the fence. That's it. But you've been secretive about it. Not secretive, just private. Nathan gets weird about social interactions. The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably. Mom? I'm here, sweetie. I'm just trying to understand why Nathan would go to such lengths if there wasn't something more serious happening. Her doubt felt like a betrayal. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm asking these questions. If Nathan has documentation of inappropriate behavior, you need to be prepared for what that might mean. After hanging up, I felt more isolated than ever. Even my mother was questioning my version of events. I tried calling my friend Sarah, but she was distant, clearly uncomfortable discussing the situation. Word was spreading through our social circle, and not in my favor. The next few days brought a series of uncomfortable encounters. At the grocery store, I ran into several neighbors who seemed to avoid eye contact. At work, colleagues who normally chatted with me kept conversations brief and professional. The insurance office felt like a minefield of whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. People are talking, Jennifer from accounting told me, during a rare private moment. There are rumors about inappropriate relationships, legal troubles. HR has been asking questions about your schedule, your time away from the office. My professional reputation was being affected by Nathan's actions. The preservation notice had somehow become public knowledge, and people were drawing their own conclusions about what it might contain. That weekend, I encountered Derek at the neighborhood restaurant where several families had gathered for a casual dinner. He was with Jocelyn, his wife, and they were sitting with another couple I recognized from the HOA meetings. "Hi, Derek," I said as I passed their table, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. He looked up briefly, his expression guarded. "Oh, hi, Lirien. How's the fence project coming along?" "Fine," he said curtly, then returned to his conversation without introducing me to the others at the table. Jocelyn watched the exchange with sharp eyes, her expression cold and assessing. The snub was public and humiliating, made worse by the fact that other diners had clearly witnessed it. When I returned to my own table, where Nathan and Mila were waiting, Nathan's expression was unreadable. "Seemed like a brief conversation," he observed. "He was busy with his wife and friends." "Interesting how people's behavior changes when circumstances shift," Nathan said, cutting his food with precise movements. "When there's accountability, when actions have consequences, when the truth becomes documented." Mila looked between us, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. "Why does everyone seem mad lately?" "Nobody's mad, sweetie," I said quickly. "Just some grown-up stuff that doesn't concern you." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. This was affecting our entire family, our entire social network. Nathan's methodical approach to gathering evidence was systematically dismantling the life I'd built, the relationships I'd cultivated, the reputation I'd maintained. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. "Your story doesn't match the logs. Meet me now." My hands shook as I read it. I looked around the house, wondering who might have sent it. Nathan was in his office as usual, but the message felt like it could have come from anyone. Derek, the HOA board, someone with access to the electronic records Nathan kept mentioning. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, driven by a need to confront whatever was waiting for me. As I stepped outside, I saw Nathan's car parked at the end of our driveway, and Derek's car pulled up beside it. Margaret Chen from the HOA was standing between them, holding what looked like a tablet or electronic device. All three of them were looking at me, waiting. The trap had been perfectly set, and I had walked directly into it. The three figures standing in my driveway looked like a tribunal waiting to deliver judgment. Nathan held a folder thick with documents. Derek kept his eyes fixed on the ground, and Margaret Chen clutched her tablet with the authority of someone who held irrefutable evidence. "Lirien," Nathan said calmly, "we need to discuss some discrepancies that have come to light." "What kind of discrepancies?" I asked, though my voice betrayed my growing panic. Margaret stepped forward, her expression professional but stern. "The HOA has been conducting a routine audit of our security systems and access logs. Some irregularities emerged that require clarification." She turned her tablet toward me, showing what appeared to be a detailed timeline with timestamps, device identifications, and location markers. "These are the electronic records from your home's smart devices, cross-referenced with our community access logs and security camera footage." My mouth went dry as I scanned the data. Every coffee meeting, every text conversation, every moment Derek had been in our house or yard was documented with scientific precision. The timeline was damning in its thoroughness. "This shows Derek's phone connecting to your home Wi-Fi network on 17 different occasions over the past 6 weeks," Margaret continued. "The duration of these connections ranges from 45 minutes to over 3 hours. I looked at Derek, expecting him to explain, to provide context that would make this look innocent. Instead, he seemed to shrink into himself. "That can't be right," I said weakly. "He's only been over a few times." Nathan opened his folder and pulled out printed pages. "Actually, the logs are quite accurate. They show not only when Derek's device is connected to our network, but also the physical proximity required for that connection. Our router's range doesn't extend beyond our immediate property." "So," I said, though I could hear the defensiveness in my voice, "so it means Derek was inside our house, or very close to it, for extended periods on multiple occasions. The question is why, and why neither of you mentioned this level of frequency to anyone." Margaret consulted her tablet again. The HOA security cameras also captured some interesting footage. Derek's car in your driveway when Nathan's car was absent. Extended conversations over your back fence. What appears to be Derek entering your house through the back door on at least 3 occasions. The evidence was overwhelming, presented with the cold precision of scientific fact. But what made it worse was how it looked. A pattern of deception, of secret meetings, of behavior that suggested far more than neighborly friendship. "It's not what it looks like," I said, the words sounding hollow even to me. "What does it look like?" Nathan asked quietly. I struggled to find an explanation that would make sense, that would account for the frequency and secrecy without admitting to the emotional affair I'd been conducting. "We're friends. We talk. Sometimes he comes over when you're not home, because it's easier to have conversations without tension." "What kind of conversations require privacy and secrecy?" Margaret asked. Derek finally spoke up. "Look, this is all being blown out of proportion. Lirien and I are neighbors. We talk about neighborhood stuff, family stuff. There's nothing inappropriate happening." Nathan turned to Derek with interest. "Nothing inappropriate. So you're saying these 17 documented visits were all innocent social calls?" "Exactly." Nathan pulled out another set of papers. "Then you won't mind explaining why your phone's GPS data shows you were at the 5th Street Coffee House last Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. At the same time, Lirien's phone was at that exact location for a duration of 1 hour and 23 minutes. Derek's face went pale. "How do you have my GPS data?" "I don't, but the HOA's investigation revealed that both of your devices connected to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi network simultaneously. The timestamps are quite specific." I felt the ground shifting beneath me. "You're tracking our phones?" "I'm not tracking anything," Nathan said. "I'm simply compiling data that already exists. Every device you carry, every network you connect to, every digital interaction you have, it's all logged and timestamped automatically. I'm just organizing it into a comprehensible timeline." Margaret looked between Derek and me with growing disapproval. "Mr. Stone, when we spoke yesterday, you told me you hadn't seen Mrs. Vale outside of casual neighborhood encounters. You specifically denied having any extended private conversations with her. Derek shifted uncomfortably. I didn't think coffee counted as what? As a private meeting, as something worth mentioning when directly asked. The lies were unraveling in real time, each piece of electronic evidence contradicting the story we'd been telling ourselves and others. What had felt like innocent friendship now looked like calculated deception. "This is harassment," I said, grasping for some way to regain control. "You're violating our privacy, stalking us with technology." Nathan's expression remained calm. "Actually, I'm using data from devices in my own home, networks I pay for, and security systems I installed for our family's protection. Nothing I've accessed is private or protected. It's all information that was being collected anyway. I just organized it." "And shared it with the HOA," I accused. "The HOA requested information as part of their security audit. I provided factual data. What conclusions people draw from that data is up to them." Margaret cleared her throat. "Mrs. Vale, the HOA board is concerned about residents using community resources and access for personal activities that might not align with our community standards." "What does that mean?" "It means we need to understand the nature of these interactions before deciding whether any community guidelines have been violated." Derek suddenly spoke up, his voice strained. "Look, I need to be clear about something. Lirien and I are just friends. Whatever these logs show, whatever it looks like, nothing inappropriate happened. I was helping with some household stuff when Nathan wasn't around. We had coffee a couple times. We talked over the fence. That's it." His denial felt like a slap. After weeks of meaningful conversations, of feeling seen and appreciated, he was reducing our connection to nothing inappropriate. The emotional intimacy we'd developed was being erased in favor of plausible deniability. "Just friends," I repeated, hurt evident in my voice. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. "Right, just neighbors being neighborly." Nathan watched this exchange with what might have been satisfaction. "So, we're all in agreement that this was simply an unusually intensive neighborly friendship. 17 visits, multiple coffee dates, extensive text communications, all completely innocent." The way he said it made it sound absurd, even to me. "Nathan, you're twisting everything," I said desperately. "You're making normal social interactions sound sinister." "I'm not making anything sound like anything. I'm presenting facts and letting people draw their own conclusions." Margaret looked at her tablet one more time. "Mrs. Vale, Mr. Stone, the board will be reviewing this information and determining whether any further action is necessary. In the meantime, we'd appreciate it if you could both be more transparent about your future interactions." As she walked away, Derek hurried after her, apparently eager to distance himself from the situation and from me. I was left standing in my driveway with Nathan, the weight of the evidence crushing any remaining illusions about how this situation might be perceived. 17 times, Nathan said quietly. "You told me he'd been over a few times." I didn't keep count. The devices did. They keep count of everything, Lirien. Every connection, every interaction, every moment of proximity. And it's all time-stamped and geotagged and backed up in multiple locations. The technological web he'd woven around our lives felt suffocating. Every digital footprint, every electronic trace, every automated log had become evidence in a case I didn't even know was being built. "What do you want from me?" I asked, exhaustion replacing anger. "I want the truth, not the version you've been telling yourself, not the story you think sounds acceptable, but the actual truth about what's been happening." I looked at our house, at the life we'd built together, at the family we'd created, and realized that Nathan's methodical documentation had already answered that question. The truth was in the data, in the patterns, in the evidence that couldn't be explained away or rationalized. The truth was that I had crossed lines I hadn't even admitted to myself, and now those lines were being drawn in stark relief by the very technology that was supposed to make our lives more convenient. It meant nothing, I said finally, the words feeling inadequate even as I spoke them. 17 times, Nathan repeated. 1 hour and 23 minutes. Multiple text conversations deleted nightly. Secret meetings, private communications, deception and denial. He paused, letting the weight of the evidence settle between us. If it meant nothing, Lirien, then what does something mean to you? The HOA office lobby felt like a courtroom as Nathan spread documents across the conference table with methodical precision. Derek sat rigidly in his chair, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Margaret Chen had called this meeting after reviewing the preliminary evidence, and the gravity of the situation was evident in everyone's posture. Before we begin, Nathan said, his voice calm and professional, I want to clarify that everything I'm presenting today consists of factual data collected from legally accessible sources. No privacy has been violated. No illegal surveillance has occurred. He opened a laptop and connected it to the room's display screen. What you're about to see is a comprehensive timeline compiled from smart home device logs, Wi-Fi access records, GPS metadata, security camera footage, and cloud storage backups. The first slide showed a calendar view of the past 6 weeks, with certain dates highlighted in red. Each red date corresponded to Derek's documented presence at our house. These 17 dates represent confirmed visits based on device connectivity logs, Nathan continued. Derek's phone, tablet, and smartwatch all connected to our home Wi-Fi network during these times. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Look, I already explained. Please let me finish, Nathan interrupted politely. The duration of these connections tells an interesting story. The next slide showed detailed timestamps. Visit 1, 47 minutes. Visit 2, 1 hour 23 minutes. Visit 3, 2 hours 15 minutes. The pattern showed increasingly longer stays, more frequent visits, and a level of familiarity that contradicted the casual, neighborly relationship both Derek and I had claimed. Now, let's overlay this with other data points, Nathan said, advancing to the next slide. Security camera footage appeared, grainy but clear enough to show Derek's car in our driveway, Derek entering through our back door, Derek and me talking intimately over the fence. Each image was time-stamped and geotagged. The interesting thing about smart home technology, Nathan explained, is that it creates multiple redundant records. When Derek's phone connected to our Wi-Fi, it also logged which specific devices in our house it communicated with. The smart speaker in our kitchen, for instance, recorded elevated voice activity during these visits. Margaret leaned forward. Are you saying you have recordings of their conversations? No. The speaker doesn't record conversations unless specifically activated, but it does log ambient audio levels, voice pattern recognition data, and proximity sensors. The data shows 2 distinct voice signatures in extended conversation during times when I was documented as being at work. I felt sick. The technology I'd barely noticed was creating a comprehensive record of every interaction, every moment of intimacy, every boundary crossed. Derek finally spoke up. This is insane. You're treating normal neighborly interactions like some kind of criminal conspiracy. Nathan turned to him with interest. Normal neighborly interactions, let's examine that claim. The next slide showed a comparison chart. Average neighborhood social visits, according to community relations studies, last approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Your visits averaged 87 minutes. Normal neighborly interactions occur openly, with all residents present. Your visits were exclusively when I was absent from the home. Maybe because you're not exactly welcoming to social interactions, Derek said defensively. Perhaps, but that doesn't explain this. Nathan clicked to the next slide, showing text message metadata, not the content of the messages, but the frequency, timing, and deletion patterns. This shows text communications between Derek and Lirien. Note the frequency, multiple times daily. Note the timing, often late evening or early morning, and note this interesting pattern. He highlighted a recurring sequence. Every night, without exception, these message threads were deleted from Lirien's phone. The deletion occurred between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, suggesting a deliberate routine rather than casual message management. My face burned with embarrassment. The pattern made it look calculated, secretive, guilty. People delete messages all the time, I said weakly. True, but complete thread deletion on a nightly basis, while maintaining other message histories indefinitely, suggests intentional concealment rather than routine maintenance. Margaret consulted her notes. Mr. Stone, when we spoke yesterday, you said you barely knew Mrs. Vale beyond casual greetings. How do you reconcile that with this level of documented interaction? Derek looked trapped. I may have downplayed the extent of our friendship. I didn't want to cause problems with my wife. So you lied. I minimized. There's a difference. Nathan advanced to another slide. Let's talk about the coffee meeting at 5th Street Coffee House. Both phones connected to the establishment's Wi-Fi simultaneously at 2:47 p.m. on Tuesday, March 15th. Connection duration, 1 hour 23 minutes. Parking lot security camera shows both vehicles present during this time frame. He paused, letting the precision of the data sink in. Derek, when asked directly about private meetings with Lirien, you denied any such encounters. This represents a clear, documentable falsehood. I didn't think coffee counted as what? As a private meeting? As something worth mentioning when directly asked by the HOA board? The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. The weight of the evidence was overwhelming, presented with such methodical thoroughness that denial seemed impossible. Nathan clicked to the final slide. This brings us to the central question: what exactly was the nature of this relationship? He looked directly at me. Lirien, you've consistently described this as innocent friendship, neighborly interaction, nothing inappropriate. I nodded, though the word felt meaningless now. Derek, you've claimed minimal acquaintance, casual greetings, normal neighborly behavior. Derek nodded reluctantly. Yet the data shows a pattern of behavior consistent with an intimate relationship conducted in secret. Extended private visits, daily private communications, secret meetings, deliberate concealment from spouses, lies to community officials. Nathan closed his laptop and looked around the room. If this is what innocent friendship looks like, I'd be very interested to see what you both consider inappropriate behavior. Margaret cleared her throat. Mrs. Vale, Mr. Stone, the evidence presented here raises serious questions about truthfulness and community standards. The HOA board will need to consider whether this pattern of deception violates our community guidelines. Derek stood abruptly. I don't have to sit here and be accused of what? Nathan asked quietly. Of exactly what the evidence shows you did? Nothing happened, Derek said desperately. We talked, we had coffee, we were friends. That's it. Friends who lie about the extent of their friendship. Friends who meet in secret. Friends who delete evidence of their communications. Friends who deceive their spouses and community officials. Nathan stood and began collecting his documents. The beauty of digital evidence is its objectivity. It doesn't care about intentions or justifications or how people feel about their actions. It simply records what happened, when it happened, and how often it happened. He looked at both Derek and me with something that might have been pity. 17 documented visits, daily secret communications, deleted evidence, provable lies to multiple parties. If this is your definition of nothing, then we have very different understandings of what words mean. Margaret stood as well. Mrs. Vale, Mr. Stone, you'll both receive written notification of the board's findings within 48 hours. Mr. Vale, thank you for your thorough presentation. As we filed out of the conference room, Derek avoided eye contact with everyone. The man who had made me feel seen and appreciated and alive had been reduced to a cornered liar, scrambling to protect his own reputation. In the parking lot, he finally approached me. "Lirien, I'm sorry it came to this. I never meant for things to get so complicated." "Complicated?" I stared at him in disbelief. "You're calling this complicated?" "You know what I mean. We connected. There's nothing wrong with that." "Then why did you lie about it? Why did you deny knowing me well when they asked directly?" Derek looked uncomfortable. "Because I knew how it would look. I knew people would make assumptions." "What assumptions? That we were having an affair?" "We weren't having an affair," he said quickly. "We were just close friends who enjoyed each other's company. Close friends who met in secret, close friends who lied to their spouses, close friends who deleted evidence of their communications." I was using Nathan's words, but they felt true in a way that Derek's rationalizations didn't. "Lirien, you're being unfair. You enjoyed our time together as much as I did. You wanted the privacy as much as I did. Don't act like I manipulated you into something you didn't want." He was right, and that made it worse. I had wanted the secrecy, the private communications, the feeling of having something that belonged just to Derek and me. I had wanted to feel desired and appreciated and special, but wanting something didn't make it right, and the evidence Nathan had compiled made it impossible to pretend our behavior had been innocent. "What are you going to tell Jocelyn?" I asked. Derek's face went pale. "I don't know. Hopefully she won't have to know the details. Maybe this can all just go away." "Go away?" "Derek, there are 17 documented visits. There's a minute-by-minute timeline. There are photographs and logs and records that will exist forever. This isn't going away. But if we both just move on, stop talking, pretend it never happened." I stared at him, realizing that he still didn't understand the magnitude of what Nathan had done. This wasn't about our feelings or our intentions or our ability to move on. This was about documented evidence that would exist regardless of what we wanted or how we felt about it. "It's too late for that," I said quietly. "It's all documented now. It's all preserved and backed up and time-stamped. Nathan made sure of that." Derek looked around the parking lot as if searching for an escape route. "What does he want? What's his endgame here?" "I think his endgame is the truth. Complete, documented, irrefutable truth." "And then what?" I thought about Nathan's methodical approach, his careful documentation, his legal preservation notices, his systematic dismantling of every lie and rationalization Derek and I had constructed. And then whatever consequences come from that truth. The legal office felt sterile and final as Nathan's attorney, James Morrison, spread the completed documentation across his conference table. 6 weeks of methodical evidence gathering had culminated in this moment, and the sheer volume of materials was staggering. "This is the most comprehensive marital documentation I've ever seen," Morrison said, flipping through folders labeled with dates, times, and evidence categories. Smart home logs, device connectivity records, GPS metadata, security footage, communication patterns, financial records, witness statements. It's like a forensic investigation. Nathan sat calmly across from me, his expression neutral, but his eyes focused with the intensity I'd seen during his most challenging math lessons. He'd approached the dissolution of our marriage with the same methodical precision he brought to solving complex equations. "The preservation notices were served 6 weeks ago," Morrison continued, "so all digital evidence has been maintained in its original form. No deletions, no alterations, no gaps in the timeline." I shifted uncomfortably in my chair, my own attorney, hastily hired when I realized the scope of what Nathan had compiled, reviewing the materials with growing concern. "Mrs. Vale," Morrison addressed me directly, "your husband is filing for legal separation with requests for exclusive use of the marital home, primary custody of your daughter, and division of assets based on documented misconduct." "Misconduct," I said, my voice sharper than intended. I didn't have an affair. Nothing physical happened. Morrison consulted his notes. The documentation shows a pattern of deception, secret communications, undisclosed meetings, and emotional intimacy conducted outside the marriage. Whether physical adultery occurred is less relevant than the documented breach of marital trust. My attorney, Linda Reeves, leaned forward. What specific evidence supports these claims? Morrison opened his laptop and connected it to the room's display. Let's start with the timeline. The screen filled with a comprehensive calendar showing 6 months of data. The first few months were normal. Routine family activities, work schedules, social events. Then Derek's presence began appearing as red markers, growing more frequent and lasting longer. This shows the progression from casual neighbor interaction to intensive secret relationship, Morrison explained. Note how the frequency increases, the duration extends, and the secrecy intensifies. He clicked to the next screen. Smart home device logs showed Derek's phone connecting to the Vale family Wi-Fi network 17 times over 6 weeks. Average connection duration, 87 minutes. These visits occurred exclusively when Mr. Vale was documented as being at work. People visit when it's convenient, Reeves argued. True, but combined with this data, the pattern becomes more significant. The next screen showed text message metadata, not the content, but the frequency and deletion patterns. Daily communications, often multiple times per day. Messages sent during work hours, late evenings, early mornings, and this interesting pattern, complete thread deletion every night between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. This suggests deliberate concealment rather than casual message management. Morrison advanced to security camera footage. The home security system captured these images. Photos appeared showing Derek's car in our driveway, Derek entering through the back door, Derek and me in close conversation over the fence. Each image was time-stamped and geotagged. Now, let's examine the deception component, Morrison continued. He displayed a series of documented statements. Derek's claims to the HOA board that he barely knew me, my assertions that he'd only visited a few times, our mutual denials of any private meetings. Each of these statements is contradicted by electronic evidence. The lies weren't casual misremembering. They were systematic attempts to conceal the true nature and extent of the relationship. Reeves tried a different approach. Even if there was an inappropriate friendship, that doesn't necessarily justify such extreme legal action. Morrison looked at Nathan, who nodded slightly. Mrs. Vale, your husband discovered that you were using marital resources, the family home, shared technology, joint accounts, to conduct a secret relationship. You used deception to create opportunities for private meetings, lied to family members and community officials, and systematically deleted evidence of your communications. He paused, letting the weight of the accusation settle. More significantly, when confronted with evidence, you continued to lie and minimize, showing no accountability for the deception or its impact on your family. Morrison clicked to another screen, showing financial records. Credit card statements show expenses for the coffee meetings, purchases of new clothing on days when meetings were scheduled, even a new phone case purchased immediately after the preservation notice was served, suggesting an attempt to alter or hide evidence. I felt cornered, trapped by the web of documentation Nathan had woven around my actions. Every choice, every moment, every decision had been recorded and was now being presented as evidence of systematic deception. What does Mr. Vale want? Reeves asked directly. Nathan spoke for the first time since the meeting began. I want legal separation with exclusive use of our home. I want primary custody of Mila with supervised visitation for Lirien. I want the record to clearly document the reasons for the marriage's dissolution. And financially? Standard asset division with adjustments for the costs of this investigation and legal proceedings. Morrison pulled out another folder. There's also this to consider. He spread out documents from my workplace. Mr. Vale's investigation revealed discrepancies between Mrs. Vale's reported work hours and her actual presence in the office. The insurance company has been notified that their employee was conducting personal business during paid work time. My stomach dropped. You contacted my employer? The timeline evidence showed you leaving work early or arriving late on days when meetings with Derek were scheduled. Your employer has a right to know when company time is being used for personal activities. Reeves looked alarmed. That could affect her employment. That's a consequence of her choices, Morrison replied. Mr. Vale didn't create the time discrepancies. He simply documented them. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Lirien, I gave you multiple opportunities to be honest about what was happening. I asked direct questions. I expressed concerns. I tried to understand what was going on. You chose deception every time. Because I knew you'd overreact, I said defensively. I knew you'd make it into something bigger than it was. Was it bigger than you claimed? The question hung in the air. Looking at the evidence spread across the table, the timeline of increasing intimacy, the pattern of deception and concealment, I realized that it had been bigger than I'd admitted, even to myself. It was an emotional affair, I said quietly, the admission feeling like a physical weight leaving my chest. I was lonely. I felt unappreciated, and Derek made me feel seen, valued. I didn't mean for it to become what it became. Nathan nodded slowly. Thank you for finally telling the truth. Morrison consulted his notes again. Mrs. Vale, your husband is prepared to proceed with separation proceedings based on the documented evidence. However, he's also prepared to consider mediation if you're willing to accept responsibility for the deception and work toward an amicable resolution. Reeves looked at me. What do you want to do? 2 years after the separation agreement, I sat in a sunlit courtroom for the final custody modification hearing. Mila, now 10, had written a letter the judge had read privately. She wanted more time with me, unsupervised. Nathan testified calmly. She's completed therapy, parenting classes, and 2 years of consistent, responsible co-parenting. The supervised visits ended 6 months ago without incident. Mila thrives with her mother. The judge nodded. Ms. Vale, your progress is commendable. The court finds you've demonstrated the stability and accountability required. Full joint custody was granted. No more supervisors, no more restricted access. Outside, Mila hugged me fiercely. Can I stay over tonight? I looked at Nathan. He smiled, small, genuine. She's packed already. That evening, we made pancakes in my modest apartment kitchen. No smart devices recording, just flour on the counter and laughter. Nathan joined us for dinner. The three of us at the table like pieces finally realigned. Later, as Mila slept in the guest room, Nathan lingered at the door. I never wanted to erase you, he said quietly. I just needed the truth to matter. It does, I replied, and I'm grateful it forced me to change. He nodded. Good night. The door closed softly. The house that once documented my betrayal now held only quiet forgiveness and second chances earned through time, not technology. The record remained, but it no longer defined us. What defined us now was showing up, honestly, consistently, together,